This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Leaders of the BRICS group arrive in Brasilia ahead of the 2019 summit. World leaders asked to commit to reducing maternal mortality at a population conference in Nairobi. And we look at how a Kenyan man uses Facebook to mobilize support for the needy. This is CGTN. Welcome to Africa Live with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. We'll bring you the details on those stories in just a moment, but first, Ramanyang with the day's business headlines. Ram.
That's right, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. Eswatini joins Zimbabwe and Botswana in banning meat from South Africa due to an outbreak of foot and mouth disease. And what countries in Africa are the easiest to visit? We'll have the latest from the African Development Bank's Visa Openness Index and plenty more in the course of the hour. For now, though, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. And let's begin in Brazil, where leaders of the BRICS group have touched down in Brasilia ahead of their summit. The meeting is expected to include talks on the expansion of the development bank. The BRICS new development bank was launched in 2014 by China, India, Russia, Brazil, and South Africa. Residents of the major emerging economies group will meet in the capital for what is widely expected to be low-key technical discussions. Well, CGTN's Stephen Gibbs is in Brasilia and is joining us live now for more on the summit. Stephen, the BRICS meeting starts today. What is on the agenda of the summit?
Well, there are two key things, really. I think the leaders of the five big developing world's economies and developing countries hope to achieve. One is focusing on that new development bank. It used to be called the BRICS Bank. It's already loaning around $12 billion, but a lot of the delegates from here, including particularly actually the delegation from South Africa, hoping that that can be expanded, that the bank will sort of ramp up the amount of loans it is able to give. Now, the other key bit on the key item on the agenda of the summit is to do with innovation. There is concern and optimism, one could possibly say, to do with the fact that the global economy is becoming increasingly automated and digitized, and just how the developed world can make sure it takes advantage of that, and it isn't taken advantage of to an excessive extent by the developed world. So some specifics about that we may well be hearing. Now, also, whenever five leaders of the developing world get together, there are plenty of bilateral agreements and meetings. We've just had one between the host, Jair Bolsonaro of Brazil, and President Xi of China. That seemed to be a patching up of their relationship. They've had a very slightly rocky relationship with China and Brazil because Bolsonaro is very pro-US, and in his campaign to become president last year was quite critical of China. That seems to be all over. They've just had a press conference and both leaders seem to go out of their way to express friendship.
So, Stephen, there are going to be some bilateral discussions there, and as you've mentioned there, the focus will be the development bank, and there's also going to be a focus on innovation. At this point, though, there are those who will be asking, how important is a BRICS, or how significant does it remain today?
It's a good question, and I think after any organization has been around more than a decade, people begin to wonder about or question its relevance. The BRICS was set up in the wake of the global economic slowdown in 2006 and 2007, and the idea was it would bring together the sort of motors of the new global economy, the developing world. Now, if you look at it, of the five members, both China and India have strong growing economies, but the other three, including South Africa, growing at around 1%. So there is an issue there. What the BRICS movement would say, but there is that there is plenty of potential still in the developing world, and also, and this is really key to the sort of the language we're hearing from this summit, is if you look at the United States now, it is led by quite a protectionist government that isn't into multilateral agreements really. So the BRICS has a new relevance. That's what the BRICS movement supporters say, is that this is the time for the developing world to get together and speak out for free trade and multilateralism and all the rest, while one corner of the global economy is going the other way.
So, Stephen, the BRICS group now has a new relevance against the backdrop of the protectionist policies that are coming out from certain economies, as well as, of course, the push for multilateralism, stronger multilateralism. It is also taking place at a time when global growth is still rather sluggish. So we're going to be looking here at what should we expect, though, out of the summit in Brazil.
We will expect a statement to come out at the end. It will probably say we need to cooperate much more closely on growing modern technology, including artificial intelligence, etc. I think you'll find that one thing the statement avoids is politics, because one of the difficulties really the BRICS nations face is that they are from a very different range of political systems, and that's particularly apparent right now because this has been hosted by Brazil, which is led by a right-wing government. So they're going to try and avoid politics in that final statement, but say, look, what unifies us is the need to work together economically. We have great potential to trade with each other, and let's do more of that.
Stephen Gibbs joining us there from Brasilia. Thank you. And still at the BRICS summit, this year's meeting is seen to usher in a second golden decade for more cooperation among the 5 emerging markets. BRICS members are expected to reaffirm support for multilateralism and partnerships. Let's take a look.
Embracing the second golden decade. After the past years, the emerging market bloc, BRICS, has grown into a major force in the global economy and a voice in international affairs. In 2018, BRICS accounted for about 24% of the world GDP and 16% of global trade.
So we are going to make some comments about strengthening and reforming multilateralism. It includes the UN, the IMF, the Security Council, the WTO. We are also going to make comments about our economic and financial cooperation in several areas.
And this year, the focus is on an innovative future. At last year's summit in South Africa, BRICS nations agreed to build a partnership for a new industrial revolution, tapping into the potential of areas such as the digital economy and smart manufacturing. BRICS leaders gather amid uncertainties with rising unilateralism and trade protectionism. These have sent jitters over currents of profound changes around the world.
We, BRIC countries, we are going to send out a strong message to the international community that we are defending strongly the multilateral system, a more open, free, fair international trade system. So I think that will be a very strong message this summit will deliver to the international community.
After the abrupt cancellation of the APEC summit in Chile, the BRICS summit has become a more essential platform for multilateralism. BRICS nations have to carry the torch of free trade. All eyes are on how far these countries will work together in pushing for their common agenda in the international arena.
To Tanzania now, where at least 6 farmers have been killed in an attack by gunmen near the southern border with Mozambique. Several others were injured. The raid on an island in Ruvuma region is the latest in a spate of attacks in which over 100 people have been killed in the area since 2017. Tanzanian security forces are pursuing the gunmen as the injured received treatment in nearby hospitals. The affected region borders Mozambique's Cabo Delgado, which has seen a rise in militant activities since foreign firms began extracting gas deposits. There's also been a rise in activities linked to Al-Shabaab, which is believed to be associated with ISIL. Well, let's cross over to Dar es Salaam in Tanzania now and join Daniel Kijo. Daniel, Tanzania says gunmen have killed 6 in an ambush near the Mozambican border. What do you know? What update do you have for us?
Thank you for having me. Well, indeed, the regional police commander as well as the director of criminal investigations, Mr. Robert Boaz, do confirm that indeed 6 Tanzanians have been shot dead and 7 others injured in a surprise attack that happened on Tuesday night. Now, the incident happened in along the Ruvuma River in Tandaimba village, which is in Mtwara region. Now, the Ruvuma River borders the two countries, meaning Tanzania as well as Mozambique. It is said that the farmers were doing the usual farming activities and were attacked by unknown assailants. They were grouped together and they were shot. Now, as it stands, we know that the 7 that were injured are in the regional hospital still undergoing treatment.
Do we know, Daniel, though, who is responsible for this attack?
Well, as it stands, the police have not stated who is responsible for the attack, but unconfirmed reports given by villagers as well as some members of the police force say that the area, they suspect that the assailants might have come from Mozambique, as well as perhaps some might be some Tanzanians, because the Mtwara and Ruvuma area is located in, like I said, between the border of Mozambique and Tanzania, and in recent months the border has seen, attacks, in this area. There have been reports since 2016 and 2017, like you mentioned, that people have been killed in this area, as well as there were times that there were assailants attacking police officers and other administrative officials in the eastern part of Tanzania, which is known as Kibiti. So this area has been unsettled and a bit dangerous in the last couple of years, but as it stands, they have not mentioned exactly who might have done it.
So, Daniel, there have been reports of attacks as far back as 2016. So this is not a new scenario. How has the government reacted to this, though, and what measures are they putting in place to make sure it does not recur?
Well, so far, with regards to this incident, the police force has already opened an investigation, in fact, an intra-regional investigation between all the regions in this area. They're also working with other security organs in the area to make sure that they hunt for the killers who did this terrible incident. Now, they also say that the search will not be limited to only Tanzania. It might cross over to Mozambique, cross the border into Mozambique. They've asked citizens to give information that might lead to apprehending the culprits. But as you said, this area in 2016 and in 2017, the Kibiti area and these parts of Tanzania have had and set these kind of incidences. And we remember the police force had formed a special unit to go and sort of stabilize the area. So in 2016 and 2017, we saw high numbers of police forces and special commandos from the police force going into the Kibiti area. And in fact, this was directed by President Magufuli to make sure that that area is stabilized. Now, the number of attacks had gone down. In fact, in 2019 this year, these are some of the first attacks that we're hearing. So it has been a hotbed for sort of these kind of activities, but the police force in the last 2 years has worked hard to stabilize the area.
Daniel Kijo joining us there from Dar es Salaam. Now, the World Health Organization has approved an experimental Ebola vaccine that proved effective in protecting people in the Democratic Republic of Congo against the deadly disease. The approval of the vaccine, manufactured by U.S. pharmaceutical company Merck, comes 2 days after the European Commission granted it a conditional marketing authorization. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
Experts from the World Health Organization say the Ebola vaccine, Iverbo, has met its standards for quality, safety, and efficacy. The endorsement means UN agencies can now procure the vaccine for countries that are at risk of Ebola outbreaks. The approval is expected to speed up access to the vaccine as well as its licensing and rollout. The Merck vaccine was being used in the DRC under compassionate grounds to help protect people in the current Ebola outbreak. The WHO Director General has described the approval as a historic step towards ensuring that people who need the vaccine the most can access it. The approval comes 2 days after the European Commission granted its manufacturers conditional approval to market it. The condition is that the vaccine be administered to people who are aged 18 and older. More than 200,000 people in the DRC have received the vaccine so far, and it's now expected to be on the market by the middle of next year. The Ebola outbreak has claimed more than 2,100 lives in the DRC since last August. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Well, CGTN's Daniel Arap Moy brings us a brief history of the vaccine.
Commercially, it's known as Iverbo or RVSV Zebov, but its real name is simply V920. Development of this drug began in 2003 when scientists at the National Microbiology Laboratory in Manitoba in Canada began developing the vaccine. The National Microbiology Laboratory is part of Public Health Agency of Canada, or PHAC. PHAC later licensed the drug to a small research firm called Neolink Genetics, which later licensed the trademark to the Canadian branch of American pharmaceutical firm Merck. The drug was aimed at taming the periodic Ebola outbreaks in former Zaire, which now is known as Democratic Republic of Congo. The first phase of trials on human beings began in 2014. Countries where these tests were carried out include Gabon, Kenya, Germany, Switzerland, Canada, and the United States. By the time the trials were being done, an Ebola outbreak that had broken out in West Africa in December 2013 was already ravaging Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. In March 2015, the second phase on human beings thus began in Guinea, with frontline public health workers being targeted. The third phase featured relatives and those affected by Ebola, as the disease claimed more victims. After its efficiency was confirmed, Merck Pharmaceuticals signed an agreement with the WHO, which allowed use of the vaccine in future cases of Ebola outbreaks. But the impressive results for an improved available vaccine was confirmed after it was used to combat yet another Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo in August 2018. It was the 10th and most deadly flare. By the time it was contained, over 2,000 people had died in DRC. Uganda also suffered 4 deaths. Avebo's performance in the Great Lakes region nation saw it being granted priority review by America's Food and Drug Administration in September 2019. A month later, the European Union's Medicine Agency recommended it being granted conditional marketing authorization, and in November 2019, EU granted it full authorization. While granting it approval, WHO said it has proved that the vaccine is efficient in managing the future Ebola cases. Daniel Arab Moy, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. Melinda Gates delivers uplifting message to women in Johannesburg. And musicians in Senegal seek to dissuade youth from taking risky journeys.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Let's now cross to Kenya, where the International Conference on Population and Development has opened with a focus on women. It is calling on world leaders to commit to reducing maternal mortality and ending harmful practices like female genital mutilation. Since Tuesday, delegates have been debating issues including the provision of abortion services and comprehensive sex education for adolescents. The three-day meeting is taking stock of promises made in Cairo 25 years ago to ensure sexual and reproductive health rights are available to all.
Women have abortions for only one reason, because they cannot cope with a particular pregnancy at a particular time. And this cannot be said enough. So I think after 25 years, we can decide to listen to women and let women decide for themselves when they want to continue a pregnancy and when they don't want to continue a pregnancy.
Investing in contraception, modern contraceptive methods, is a known and proven way for cost savings to eliminate unwanted pregnancies.
4 out of 9 of South Africa's provinces should be declared disaster zones due to the current drought gripping parts of the country. That's according to Agri South Africa, a federation of agricultural organizations. It released its 2019-2020 drought report in Centurion on Tuesday. The report shows the effect of drought on the agricultural industry over the past 5 years. As CGTN's Yulisa Njamela now tells us more.
The report paints a bleak picture. Drought is ravaging Southern Africa. It's also creating fears of serious food insecurity in large parts of the region.
Climate change is the #1 international risk. And the #1 mitigant is climate change adaptation. The #1. It affects everything. It affects ecosystems, it affects water systems, it affects the economy, it affects food security, it affects social stability. It has a massive impact on countries. And currently, we are experiencing a climate change shift in Southern Africa. So the #1 priority is to remain food secure and to ensure that we have regional food security, which we are already battling to do.
It impacts very severely on the commercial farmers. The emerging farmers, as we know, we are 40% transformed in South Africa when it comes to the livestock industry. And the drought always is more devastating towards the emerging farmers, but this time it is the commercial farmers that's also in there.
The water shortage issue in Southern Africa also presents serious problems for farmers. In October, the Water and Sanitation Ministry pleaded with South Africans to use water sparingly to avoid the taps running dry.
A dairy cow needs about 2.5 to 3 litres of water per litre of milk that it produces on a daily basis. So we're looking at, a cow that's producing about 40 litres will need about 120 litres per day. So you can see, if a cow hasn't got water, then the milk production will also go down, and eventually that cow will then die because of a lack of water.
This drought is also affecting the wildlife, which in turn affects other critical industries.
Buyer's market has dropped because people don't have grass, they don't have feed, so they won't buy animals. We've seen hunters and tourism market being negatively affected. Who wants to hunt an animal which is on its last legs, and who want to go on a game drive seeing wildlife dying?
In South Africa, agriculture is viewed as the best vehicle to address poverty and revive rural economies. Agri-SA says farmers are experiencing the driest seasons of all time, if not the driest, and they're constantly forced to sell their livestock.
But we are in a drier climatic cycle at this stage. The prognosis for the summer rainfall areas is not too bad at this stage, but it can change very quickly if sufficient rain doesn't fall within the next month. The crisis of the drought is so big that we have to put it out there, and at this stage it's so serious that I do think food security is a concern to us.
The agricultural sector is calling on government for more financial aid to address the debilitating drought, which has already cost the industry billions of rand. Yulisa Njamela for CGTN in Centurion, South Africa.
And still in South Africa, philanthropist Melinda Gates has urged women to help lift each other up and break the chains of inequality that keep more than half the population trapped in poverty. In her newly released book, The Moment of Lift, she details the challenges that women face in achieving gender equality. CGTN's Julie Shire has this report.
Melinda Gates has spent the last 20 years working in some of the world's poorest communities. Addressing an audience in Johannesburg, she touched on proper health care for women and the main stumbling block, access to contraceptives.
I realize there are 210 million women are asking us for contraceptives, and we weren't delivering them as a global health community. There is no country in the world that has gone from low income to middle income without making this transition to making sure that women have broad access to contraceptives. If you don't do that, your country is going to be locked in a cycle of poverty.
Moment of Lift details women's fight for equality in the United States and in other countries, and shows how women and girls around the world still sacrifice their own education for home chores.
We need to look at the secondary education and how much girls are dropping out of the secondary school system because of so many of these pressures that are on their family or on them to leave school. And yet we know if a girl stays in school, her chance of climbing out of poverty and her chance of educating her daughters and her sons is so much higher.
Melinda believes if we invest in women, we uplift humanity. And it's up to women and societies to effect this change.
You need every single person in this country on the edge of their seat in their chair saying, we are going to do something about this. We're going to create change. And it takes everybody coming together. It takes people in seats of power. It takes women coming out of these poor and disadvantaged neighborhoods speaking out. It takes men saying, this isn't right.
Gates' message was simple: help lift someone else.
The message of actually impacting one person at a time is what we need now, because I think we get overwhelmed, especially in South Africa, with the stories that we encounter. There's poverty, there's gender-based violence, and very often you just don't know where to start.
When you see someone like Melinda, someone who has power, someone who has influence, still facing difficulties that we average normal women are facing, but you feel encouraged that we can win this fight. We will win the fight against the oppression of women, the fight against gender-based violence.
It's an important reminder that regardless of where you are in terms of geography, your age, your gender, even your class or what kind of school education you have, we are all worthy of dignity.
Melinda Gates was well received by the audience here. She encouraged women to follow their passion and to shine as they go into the world and make a difference in the lives of others. Julie Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
A French Senegalese director, Mati Diop, has become the first black woman to receive a prize at the Cannes Film Festival. Her movie, Atlantics, has won critical acclaim and will represent Senegal at the Oscars next year. CGTN's Daniela Pearson has more.
At this year's Cannes Film Festival, it won the Grand Prix, the second most prestigious prize after the Palme d'Or. Atlantics by director Mati Diop tells the story of Ada, a young Senegalese woman facing a forced marriage. Her life unravels after her secret lover Suleiman drowns at sea. The idea for the movie first came to Diop in 2013. It was in the capital Dakar that she saw for herself the effects of migration on Senegalese society.
Originally, I wanted to devote a movie to a specific group of youth that had disappeared at sea, trying to reach Spain for a better future, to find work. I realized it was very delicate to make a movie about this because you take the risk of locking an entire youth and an entire country within the theme of immigration, and that was everything which I did not want to do.
To preserve authenticity, there are no professional actors in the leading roles. Instead, they were found outside nightclubs or in the streets where the film is set.
Casting doesn't mean walking the streets hoping to find what you want by chance. For me, it was about actually meeting the characters that I wrote about. For the character of Suleiman, Ada's lover, who has been working on a construction site for several months without pay, so he's being exploited, I went myself to a construction site to cast him, to find Suleiman among the workers.
About 1 in 4 migrants died in 2006 attempting to reach the Canary Islands off the shores of Spain. That's according to figures from the International Organization of Migration. But Diop says that she wanted the film to turn attention away from the statistics and back onto individuals.
Everything that was covered in the movie is real. Everything that was covered exists in Senegal. It's true young people don't take to the sea like before, but it was a reality and still is. So it's really Senegal's reality. Forced marriage, exploitation of the youth.
The coming-of-age tale captures life in a country struggling to create enough jobs for its booming youth population. According to the IOM, about 60% of the Senegalese population is under 25. Those that have jobs take home an average of just $6 a day. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
And staying in Senegal for the moment, using their musical talent, a group of young musicians in Senegal is hoping to deter young people from embarking on risky journeys across the Mediterranean to Europe. Here's more on that story.
As she walks along this long beach in Dakar, Astou Faye's mind is in Europe. That is where she wants to move to fulfill a long-held dream of setting up a cosmetic shop. She is a single mother, and the future of her 3-year-old son is all that bothers her. But she wants to do it legally. An unfortunate fate that befell a boy she knew who embarked on a journey to Europe through the Mediterranean Sea still sent chills down her spine.
The mother started to cry because she didn't know where to go search for her son. She had no means to start looking for him, and she didn't know which state he was in. We sat down, we did some research, and then we saw that most people who left by sea don't make it alive, so we automatically thought we lost him.
Like Fatou, many young people are dreaming of seeking better opportunities in Europe, and many risk these journeys through the Mediterranean, where many die. This is why a group of young artists have been seeking to discourage their peers from making these dangerous choices.
The way our fellow Africans are being chased away, like when they boat in the islands of Lampedusa, almost all European countries refuse to welcome the migrants. We follow these tragedies. They make us very emotional, pain that we cannot describe. I think it is not worth it because when we believe in ourselves, we believe we can change things. We can change them.
I tried to leave as well, the legal way, but God decided against it. I did not get the opportunity. I thank this academy. They approached me, they are big brothers. They told me about the project and I believed in it. I am with them 100%.
Senegal might be one of the biggest economies in West Africa, but it is also grappling with many challenges. Rising cost of living, poverty, and scarcity of jobs make it a tough situation for many locals. And to them, seeking perceived greener pastures in Europe seems to be an enticing but deadly choice. At the peak of illegal migration into Europe in 2016, Senegal accounted for the 3rd highest number of citizens caught up in the troubled waters of the Mediterranean. The numbers have since dropped. And with such artistic projects, it is hoped that the numbers will drop even further. For many who set sail, never return alive. Daniel Arap Moy, CGTN.
Well, let's now go to Rama Nyang for a look at the day's business news. Rama.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in business. Eswatini joins Zimbabwe and Botswana in banning meat imports from South Africa due to an outbreak of foot and mouth disease. And what are the easiest countries to visit in Africa? We'll take a look at the latest edition of the Visa Openness Index from the African Development Bank.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
Daniel Teklehemeno is a pioneering icon of African cycling. He is a trailblazer in the truest sense of the word, competing internationally, achieving world-class results, and going where no other black African cyclist has ever gone before.
Let's start in agriculture. Eswatini, the country formerly known as Swaziland, has suspended meat imports from South Africa following another outbreak of foot and mouth disease. Now, this is the second time this year that the country is banning meat from its southern neighbor. Botswana and Zimbabwe have done the exact same thing. Eswatini is expected to only lift the ban once the highly contagious viral disease has been eradicated. South Africa has confirmed that the outbreak in Limpopo province did take place. It has one farm under quarantine at the moment in order to prevent the spread of the disease. According to reports, South Africa's live animal exports to Eswatini totaled $31 million between January and September. The African Development Bank has released its fourth edition of the Africa Visa Openness Index at the Africa Investment Forum in Johannesburg, South Africa. Now, this monitoring tool and ranking system tracks and assesses the ease with which African nationals can get visas to travel to other African countries. Here's GTN's Angela Coppola with that report.
According to the index, Africans can travel to 27 countries, either visa-free or they can get a visa on arrival. Ethiopia is the biggest mover, up 32 places, and it's now in the top 20 most visa-open African countries.
And for one reason, it basically issues visas on arrival for all Africans. So whereas before, a big proportion of its visa policy was visa at departure, and so yeah, that jump is just basically because of that policy decision.
The release of the Africa Openness Index comes a day after the South African government announced the relaxation of documentation for travelling with minor children. At the same time announcing the piloting of an online e-visa project for so-called low-risk travellers.
On the issue of minors, yes, I think it definitely have a positive impact. Again, personally, I've gone through that with my children, where I, as the mother, their father was not there. They said they needed the consent of the father, and my kids could not travel with me. So we had to change until, it was really ridiculous. I mean, it got to a point where, we almost gave up.
There's a school of thought that relaxation of visa requirements could lead to an influx of people from other African countries.
What the visa index does is that it shows that those countries that have opened have not been flooded with people, because I think that's the fear. So what we're trying to do also with the index is to illustrate that really, if you look at Rwanda, you look at Mauritius, you look at Benin now, they've opened up. Those are the three countries where you just walk in. Seychelles, there haven't been...
I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Sandton, South Africa.
Now, still on the African Development Bank, it says it will not fund coal-fired power plant projects in Kenya, and it has no plans, in fact, to finance any coal power plant projects in the future. The bank's president, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, confirmed that the bank is turning its focus to renewable energy, and he says that coal projects do pose a risk of becoming stranded assets on the bank's balance sheet. The lender has published an assessment for the Lamu coal power plant, which was halted by a local environmental tribunal. Now, construction of that near 1 gigawatt plant was originally supposed to start back in 2015, but financiers around the world are now restricting investments in coal as climate activists and citizens voice growing concerns about the impact of burning fossil fuels on the climate. On to Zimbabwe now. The authorities over there are banning the installation of new electric water heaters in a bid to save what little generation capacity they have. According to the new regulations, the country's electricity supplier will no longer be allowed to connect power to premises that do not have solar water heaters. The restriction comes as the country endures rolling blackouts that last up to 18 hours a day. Load shedding has been intensified by the low water levels in dams due to severe drought and constant breakdowns of coal-fired generators. Electric water heaters apparently consume electricity generated by about 400 megawatts of generation capacity every day. Daily output at this point in time is about 563 megawatts, but actual demand to meet it, you need at least 1.2 gigawatts. On to West Africa now. Online trading has been gaining popularity in many countries across the continent. The continent's leading e-commerce platform, Jumia, says it plans to use its Black Friday campaign to increase access to e-commerce across the continent. Nigeria is its largest single market, and over there the company has already started off its Black Friday sales drive. It says it hopes to attract a new surge of shoppers during this period. Here's CGTN's Deji Badmus with more.
Every ardent online shopper in Nigeria, like Annetta Felix, always looks forward to the month of November, when Jumia runs its Black Friday campaign. And it's mainly for one reason.
I was looking forward to getting a gift for a friend, and it turns out that I checked Jumia, and there's a shoe going for 13,000 naira. When I looked it up on Jumia, it was about 3,000. I was blown away. So deals like that just makes people keep coming back.
So for the next 3 weeks, she and other online shoppers on the Jumia platform can expect some of the best deals and massive discounts, as well as flash sales on a wide variety of products. The Africa online giant says over 12,000 sellers are listing 10 million products on its platform during its Black Friday campaign.
With Black Friday deals like this, coupled with campaigns with social media influencers, would allow people to realize that it's actually cheaper to shop online. Delivery fee, anybody might complain of, is even just a fraction of what you spend, in transportation from your house to the far off market, So yes, this Black Friday deals would enable more people, accept the culture of online shopping.
Truth be told, some of the deals are mind-blowing. The discounts are massive, and for instance, some of the top-selling items here come with discounts of over 70%. It's no question that most people would find it irresistible.
And it's the reason why Jumia says it hopes to see a surge of new shoppers during the campaign period, with the company's head of growth saying, quote, "It's an avenue for the conversion of bricks and mortar shoppers to online shoppers, for them to experience the ease and time-saving benefits that come with e-commerce," end of quote.
I think the number can increase when the network system is good, because the strength of the network is still pretty poor in Nigeria or Africa. But I know if it's very good, I'm very sure people would shop online more than before.
E-commerce is still very low in Africa, where the retail business is still predominantly bricks and mortar. But the potential for growth is huge. Internet penetration is growing. The cost of data is gradually coming down. Smartphone users are going up. So also is the level of literacy. These are some of the potentials Africa online marketplaces like Jumia, Kilimall, Konga and others are leveraging on to increase e-commerce access on the continent. CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
In North Africa, Tunisia is making a feasibility study to launch what it describes as an e-dinar, essentially a central bank arranged digital currency in 2020. Now, the project was announced during the ceremony for the creation of the Forex Maghreb Association. CGTN's Adin Chouachi has the details.
The Vice President of Forex Maghreb noted that Tunisia plans to digitize its currency in the future. However, the project is still under study by the central bank and its partners.
It is too early to talk about e-dinar. Tunisia is working step by step and has the ambition to accelerate the process. However, we are not yet ready. In May 2018, Tunisia hosted the African Blockchain Summit, and the central bank made it clear that cryptocurrency is at a stage of reflection.
Experts added that using cryptocurrency will have many advantages and boost the national economy.
We are inspired by China that prepares to launch a central bank digital currency. Our target behind using core currency is to combat the parallel market and tax evasion in Tunisia.
The new currency could have North African dimensions and contribute to boosting growth in Tunisia and resolving some of the difficulties hindering North African cooperation, such as customs and political obstacles.
The initiative is interesting, but the central bank should consider the advantages and disadvantages of cryptocurrency on a national and regional level.
Tunisia launched an initiative a year ago to reactivate relations between Maghreb banks. In this regard, central bank governors in the region have begun to work on several areas, including understanding the technological development of the electronic payment sector, financial inclusion through new technologies, and analysis of financial institutions. The Central Bank of Tunisia is currently studying ways of monitoring the various technological developments in the financial and monetary sectors, while preserving the national currency and working to achieve electronic payment integration. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
One last story for you. The American coffee chain Starbucks is scheduled to open its largest single store in Chicago. The outlet will occupy retail space estimated at 35,000 square meters across some 5 different floors. The Starbucks Reserve Roastery will feature 3 coffee bars, alcoholic beverages are going to be on offer, coffee-inspired cocktails as well, and an enormous selection of delicacies. The opening will mark the chain's 6th global Reserve Roastery, massive upscale coffee shops that essentially feature specialty items and experiences that you can't get at your typical Starbucks outlet. I'll leave you there for the time being, but I'll be back at the top of the hour. We'll be in West Africa, Ghana to be specific. The finance minister has presented the country's budget ahead of the 2020 elections. It's a $15.5 billion spending plan. How's he going to fund it all? We'll have some answers for you at the top of the hour. See you then. For now, though, back to Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. We look at how a Kenyan man uses Facebook to mobilize support for the needy. The internet and social media platforms have been getting quite a bad reputation recently, from spreading fake news to sophisticated crime and from cyber attacks to cyberbullying. Now, a Kenyan man, however, has been using the social media platform to help raise funds for those in need. CGTN's Ashtatal has more on this charitable initiative.
As of 2018, there were over 7 million Kenyans scrolling through Facebook. Beyond connecting with friends, the platform allows ordinary people to share their stories. Ndugu Nyoro was approached by a friend to share the plight of a sick boy from his village. Nyoro shared the story and watched as Kenyans pitched in.
I think when an opportunity presented itself and I saw that Kenyans are willing to help, then what I did is that I just offered myself as a platform for us to help.
As the appeals for help poured in, Nyoro and volunteers took it upon themselves to verify each claim before posting. But as the platform grew to over 150,000 followers, challenges arose and he realized the need to formalize the process.
But again, the cases were too overwhelming, and of course with the cases being overwhelming, sometimes challenges, how to address different cases. That's when we thought of coming up with an organization.
A local bank had invited Nyoro to select candidates for their scholarship program. But after the quota was met, many students were left without an opportunity to further their education. So in January 2017, he set up the Effecto Foundation. He turned back to his Facebook family, sharing stories of students in need. Gladys is one of the students whose story he shared. At 12, she was forced to leave school and work as a housekeeper to support her family.
Going to school, coming back to work, it was really tough. And I also believe in giving. And as you can see, I'm also a prefect, so I serve others also, and I feel very nice serving them.
Feeling the support of the wider community is something the recipients appreciate.
So much encouraging to find that there are people outside there who are there to help you and to cater for your needs and to feel that you belong somewhere in the society.
No matter what, Nyoro has shown Kenyans are willing to help a person in need, even if they're a complete stranger. Astatal, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
And your sports news coming up next. Here's what's ahead. Egypt star Mo Salah to miss the Kenya and Comoros 2021 AFCON qualifiers with an ankle injury.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa.